Hello, this is Dale, and I'm joined by Mike Jones and also by the famous Bill Maher, who has the HBO show called Real Time with Bill Maher. Isn't that right, Bill?
I know that. No, that's Bill Meyer mornings on KMED. Bill Maher wasn't available. Sorry.
Oh no, I wasn't prepared.
I'm
No,
sorry. He was in the process of hating on some conservatives. He just, wasn't available. Sorry.
that's right. That's right. So we'll do the opposite instead. Yes, Bill Meyer, of course, with the aptly named Bill Meyer Show. He's on KMED 1440 AM and also here in Josephine County, streaming online for 3 hours every weekday. And so now, what is the question that one could ask? Because everybody here that watches this knows that it's a fun show and a funny show. And then once we get you all nice and relaxed, then we go for the jugular. And so then the question, what question could you possibly ask of a professional talk show host? But I have the question, Bill.
Okay. I'm afraid to ask.
Oh, come on
I'm
now.
afraid to hear it.
What,
I'm afraid to hear it.
Yeah.
what's the one question that you hope nobody ever asks you?
Oh, the one question I hope nobody ever asks me. I've never had that. That's the one. That's it right there. Because most people are pretty darn comfortable asking me just about anything. Really, there's not too much in my past. I mean, I've got my problems certainly. There we go. The phone numbers for the 3 ex-wives. I think that's what I.
That's a good answer.
Yeah, that's the
Okay.
one I don't want people asking me.
Well, I've got one for you, 202-456-1212.
Maybe for phone we should just swap them.
That's the White House.
Oh, the White House. Oh,
Yeah.
well, you can tell I haven't called it lately. I didn't recognize it.
Yeah, I haven't either, but Mike does all the time about our guests. Bill, we listen to your show all the time, of course, and I cannot imagine that anybody in our area would be thinking that they could get the same kind of quality from a talk show as they get from yours. I mean, we have a local radio station. Mike, Bill doesn't like referring to the radio station by its name or its owner, so we won't do that.
Well, but he's on our show now.
But see,
You guys can call it whatever you want. It's your show.
It makes him feel uncomfortable, so I won't mention Carl
No,
Wilson.
no, it's not that. I mean, you can do what you want. It's just that I can't put it on my radio station.
Okay. Well,
I
the
wouldn't
rest of
be
the show.
advertising Carl and Kjo. No, that kind of thing.
Oh, he's
Nothing
doing it
personal,
himself.
it's just
Yay. No, really, we do listen to your show, and a lot of people here do. What are you finding? Everybody is going to be asking, where do you get your ideas and how, oh boy, I don't want to ask that kind of stuff. What I really want to know is when you have people on who are controversial but a bit repetitive, they're asking the same thing over and over and over again, how do you mix that being a nice host and telling them as nicely as possible, please don't ask me about chemtrails?
Chemtrails?
Yes.
Yes.
Actually, I think that's the second question I really don't care to talk about, but people will anyway. And by the way, it's not that I don't think that there is geoengineering going on. I've talked about this several times. I think when it comes right down to it, Mike and Dale, is that there are so many conspiracies, so many problems I think facing us all right in our face that I could actually go down to City Hall and dig up some information, much like you and Mike do in your show on BadCounty.com. And it makes it really difficult to say, I'm going to spend a lot of time and energy into, who may be spraying something or not spraying something, and what's in it, and how much of it is coming to the ground, and if this is causing nutritional deficiencies in children in the Ashland School District. I had to pick my battles. I guess that's pretty much what I'm getting at.
Yes.
Well, one of the things you keep saying to that caller and others is, please explain to me, and I don't think they ever do, why government officials would spray that on themselves.
Well, yeah, and usually the answer comes back as, well, there is special technology that these individuals
Right,
are
they've been
able to
inoculated.
protect themselves in their elite bunker. And I'm sure there are elite bunkers out somewhere. We're hearing about bankers all the time that are purchasing land out in the middle of nowhere so that if stuff really ever hits the fan, they'll have a place to go hide. And I suppose they'll have that extra super high technology to be able to protect them from the chemtrails and the scalar waves at that time.
Yes.
But other than that, I don't know. This is just all speculation, pure speculation on my part.
Perfectly logical.
All right.
It does
Next
make
question.
it does. This is a give and take. This is not the Spanish Inquisition. Not that we're going to.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't get interviewed that much. I'm not experienced at this like you are.
Well, so far we can see why you don't, and so.
Oh man. Dial tone.
No, he's got a really good sense of humor, and people need to know that. One of the things that. Yeah, well, it's definitely true. We're not just buttering him up. There's just something about that whole theory of buttering somebody up. It's just kind of disgusting. Bill, one of the things that we've noticed occasionally, the one that comes most readily to mind for me is this guy that came in from the, we don't have to mention people by name if you don't want to, but you're right, it is our show. The fellow that came in from the Farm Bureau, and I envisioned that he had this piece of paper in front of him, and you had the same documentation, and so did I. And the guy is reading from this about, what was it, about genetic engineering. And he's saying, well, it says right in here that 1, 2, 3, and you're looking at it, and I'm looking at it at home, and we're going, that's not what it says.
There's a lot of that. That was a pretty hotly contested election, as you can well imagine. This is going back to what, spring of last year, the GMO?
Yes.
The GMO-free Jackson County situation. I forget the gentleman's name, the representative, and he was actually a hired gun for the Farm Bureau. And I think it's just one of those things where you talk your book, and if your book's not necessarily supporting you, well then you're going to find a way to shade it because he's getting paid to basically get the votes. Didn't work that time though.
It didn't, but what bothered me is that I've often said that I don't mind if somebody wants to argue the points and they have a different point of view. As a matter of fact, I'll take your point of view, you take mine, and let's have some fun arguing against what we normally say. That would be very interesting. Mm-hmm. What really bothers me is when someone just flat out lies, I went to that same meeting and that never happened.
That sounds like, I think you've had meetings like that with some of the Josephine County commissioners, have you not?
Yeah.
Absolutely. And we have it on tape. And they say, no, that never happened. I never said that. Yeah.
Well, Dale and Mike, let's venture into this. Let's think about that just for a moment. Is there not a possibility, and let's think about this. You are a Josephine County or a Jackson County official. You're elected. People are recording just about everything you do, especially with the BadCounty.com folks always hanging out there. And I imagine that there are many meetings, many opportunities to, I guess there are many opportunities to screw up. Has that ever been a consideration? There have been times that I've thought I've said something, and I would sit there and argue with a listener, and then I went back and listened to a recording that I had done several months ago, and then oh, wait a minute, I didn't say that. Do you ever have that happen?
But how do you handle that?
Some of the elected officials. I'm just curious if that has ever happened.
Being a good guy, how do you handle that after you find out?
Well, I said I was wrong.
Right. That's
I
all.
actually did say it. That's what I do. I said, you're right. I did say this, and I'm sorry, or else I've changed my position. I've changed my position too. There are times I can do that.
And there you go, and that's all that this is about. Look, here's this situation with Keith Heck, and he says some kind of lunkhead thing in a meeting. It wasn't very smart. I mean, they're trying to attract high-tech workers, and he's jumping on the case of high-tech workers. He's calling them little moles that sneak around and do lesser services. Well, please move here and bring your high-tech. No, I don't think I will. Not with a. Anyway, so
okay.
So
let me ask you both then: is this really about Keith Heck calling people little moles? Was Was he being derogatory about it, or is it like when we talk about little gremlins running around doing the the real work of society? Was there a possibility he's just having some fun with that?
That's certainly possible, and so that wasn't the big controversy. That was a little controversy. So he said something dumb.
Right, exactly. He didn't. It wasn't a big deal.
Good. Good.
But
it wasn't.
It really wasn't a big deal. He unfortunately made it that because when Dale came up and you know how you prod something to see if it's still alive.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Dale does that all the time. He throws something out, and if they get a reaction, then he plays the fish for a little while.
And how easy would it have been for him to say, you know what? Doesn't everybody make a mistake? I mean, that's not what I meant.
However, what he did instead of that was he said, "Oh, this is highly edited. You took my words out of context. Blah 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 blah."
Now you see, that's where you cross the line at that point. I guess maybe we're dealing with a group of people, and maybe what we're looking at here, especially in Josephine County, is that much like Gold Hill, the Gold Hill officials over time. You recall the recall scandals and Mary Kay being sold out of the trunk of police cars, that kind of thing. You get to the point where there is so much derision heaped on public officials that there is a very a hypersensitive approach to everything, because you're just trying to do the right thing for the most part, but maybe you're not thinking things through properly. And I don't think anybody wants to admit they've done something wrong. I guess that's really what we're dealing with, is it not the case?
Mike and I have lots of discussions about this, and what I say to Mike is, if you start off from the right point of view, in my opinion, if you're a moral person, if you're an honest person, if you're a good person, you're going to screw up every once in a while. You're going to say something stupid.
Absolutely.
And the way that Mike
if you're going to be talking for several hours a day, like I do, or like what you folks do, or what the people in Josephine County governance do when they go out and have a meeting, there is a chance that you're going to say something boneheaded inadvertently. It's just human nature.
But if you start from the wrong place, you have to constantly be watching yourself and then be thinking ahead of time, how can I lie about this? It's the initial point that's the problem. If your first reaction is 1, to deny it, 2, then to lie about it, and then 3, to denigrate the people who brought it up, there's a problem from the get-go.
Well, it certainly, Mike, I imagine this probably engenders a bit of distrust and cynicism within the electorate. Fair enough?
Yeah, I'd say so. One of the things that, it bothers me a little. I understand that these people that are getting this criticism, they're living in a different circle than we are, and they think that what they're doing is great. They think, that it's very above board. But so when they get a little criticism and they react in this way, that's what causes the backlash.
Yeah, and I also think that there is just how do I put this? There's it's the good old boy, and by the way, you don't have to be a boy to be on the good old boy network. There's a good old boy network in small city, small county governments, Jackson, Josephine County, and people are good, they're well-meaning, but I think sometimes what happens is that you get insular, you have your friends, it's human nature, and everybody tries to do things to protect themselves and or the buddies and or the power structure. And I can give you an example even from Jackson County a number of years ago. Do you remember, and I've talked about this on the air, so this is nothing new for people who listen to the show, but there was the time when the county commissioners were first going for that big pay raise up to about $89,000, and this is when the big recession had first started off. People were hemorrhaging jobs, getting thrown out of work, and then were being said, hey, we're going to go from $60,000 to some $90,000 a year plus PERS, and people were kind of coming unglued about it. And I went and talked to the board one day and addressed the board, and basically got a dressing down from one of the county commissioners. And it was like, young man, you're going to stay there. You're going to listen to me tell you how things are. And it's like, wait a minute, I'm the person paying the taxes, but it doesn't matter. It's the last thing you want to do. So anyway, came back, and a few days later, there was another county official who I did promise to kind of leave out of it. And so I'm not going to mention his name at this point, but no longer in office or anything like that. So it came and addressed me and said, hey, Bill, we got a good thing going on here in Jackson County. Why don't you go easy on CW? That was kind of the comment that was made at that point. And I think he had a lot of that going on everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
It's just human nature. I lost a lot of respect for the whole county government system at that point when you realize how much of it is a bit of backslapping and, hey, you know, I'll scratch your back, you scratch mine. So if people are suspect about individual government motivations, maybe there's a good reason for that. That's all.
Oh, for sure. One of the previous commissioners who was known for, stirring it up down at the commissioner's office there.
That would probably be Castanelli, right?
Well, no, actually, previous to that. And this was I remember when I first moved here in 2003 and 4, there was this big controversy about we had managers for every 2.5 employees and 9-week vacations and all of this crazy stuff, which this commissioner was addressing as corruption. And so about a year ago, I called the guy up on the phone. He really doesn't, get out much in society now. But he said that one of the very first things that happens to you when you get elected commissioner is the union invites you on a big junket, and you go there and they wine you and dine you.
Oh, really? I didn't even know that. I didn't know that.
And tell you, how it's going to be.
Oh. Well, you see, then along with the junket, then the county power structure then sends you over to the Association of Oregon Counties, where you're supposed to learn how things really work, which means don't bring up pesky things like Constitution. Right. You know, those are the things. You never want to talk about constitutions once you're dealing with grant funding streams and environmental impacts and all the rest of it. You're just supposed to, we all agree we're going to do this.
Right.
So, needless to say, where do we go from here then? I guess these are the questions we need to ask ourselves.
We have a fairly nice little newspaper up in the Illinois Valley. It's run by Dan Mancuso, and I'm talking with Dan about some big story that come up, and it involved the Illinois Valley. This was
by the way, is this Mancuso related to Damon?
No.
Over at JB?
No, they had the same name, but almost the same name. No, not.
Okay.
And I said, but where's your coverage of this? He said, well, I really can't cover that story. Why not? He said, well, my advertisers wouldn't like it.
That is a sad fact of life, though.
Yeah.
This is a sad fact of life in anybody who depends on advertising for revenue everywhere. I mean, when was the last time you saw anybody, let's say, from a local television station, we're going to go in and investigate a car dealer, let's just say any car dealer whatsoever, and who may have had some accusations of problems. I mean, these things happen. We know. It's just real life. And no one's going to touch that. I mean, you think you're going to risk advertising budget? There's no way. Nobody can afford to do that.
Right. That makes total sense.
Well,
and so once again, who's going to do it?
We are.
Okay. So in other words, you're not making any money on this, are you?
No, we're not. No, we're doing it.
What's going to make it difficult to get that ship sailing.
Yeah. Well, it comes right down to it. I try to put myself in the shoes. There are times that I'll wonder why, let's say, the Mail Tribune won't cover something a little more intently, or Channel 10, Channel 12, Channel 5, and then you start realizing that that's part of it. It's almost like because of the dependence on advertising revenue, you're forced to not bite the hand that is at least feeding your friends in the community. You have to be careful. You got to kind of ride the rail. Be very careful.
There's. Go ahead, Mike.
There must be a line there, of course. Certainly, if they cross some line of illegality that leads to personal harm or something, you have to go, okay, now it's time to launch.
Mm-hmm. Exactly, but I don't think anybody in media these days, and this is everywhere. This is not just around Southern Oregon. I don't think people go sniffing for people who could possibly impact their livelihood very badly. They don't go intentionally looking for people to smack. I think that's what's going on.
Well, it's it's interesting. It's an amazing thing that you're a media person. Of course, we're not. You're, according to the county commissioners, we're almost at 200,000 views, but you're no kind of media. Okay. So you're a media person that's trusted by a lot of people, by a certain class of people, a certain grouping of people who normally don't trust any media at all, but they trust you. And so how have you earned that trust with people that normally say, oh, all media is corrupt?
Well, I think part of that goes to that I'm just inherently honest about my opinion on something. I'll be the first to tell you if I got something wrong, and I'll even say this is speculation. I'm not going to take my opinion or speculation and present it as fact. But I try to tie it into some greater principle, be it limited government, my inherent libertarian position on many things, and also is what they're trying to do to you helping you? Is it helping liberty? Is it helping liberty, or is it not? And that's why I tend to focus a lot on those kind of issues rather than is it Democrat or Republican. And believe me, I have so many things that I smack around my Republican friends so much because there's so much hypocrisy to go around. And I think that's one of the reasons why they can trust me, even though I am a Republican, and I'm a registered Republican. I can't exactly say that I'm a very good Republican. Is that a good way of putting it?
You mean the party has left you?
Yeah.
Oh, the party left me a long time ago. And I think there is a huge sort of libertarian conservative following in this part of the state.
That feels very left out of a lot of what's been going on with electoral politics.
No question.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well,
I think that's part of it, and I'm pretty comfortable with those people. I feel much the same way, and yet I'm going to be polite. I'm going to get along with our government officials too, and there's no reason to kick anybody around. But ultimately, a lot of the people that I think that that you end up voting for in many cases, or is it that you really love this person's policy, or it's just about the best available. That's kind of what we're doing with a lot of positions, the best available. Who's there, who ran, who is, we've gotten to electable, right, Mike and Dale? I mean, who is electable?
Yeah, I think it's dangerous to follow anybody lock, stock, and barrel. You're going to end up disappointed, and that's the older I get, the more I try to keep that in mind when election season rolls around.
Indeed. And, as an example, I'll bring up a great example of a man who I absolutely love, and that's Dennis Linthicum, who's a former Josephine County commissioner. And yet you knew, in spite of the fact that he was about as rock-rib conservative and libertarian and limited government and really meant it, unless you're able to generate dissatisfaction with Congressman Walden as an example, there wasn't a chance. It didn't matter how good somebody was. And sometimes I think that in the libertarian/Republican world, sometimes we're not necessarily as pragmatic as we should be.
Right. And I think you're talking about Klamath County, right?
Yes, Klamath County.
Yeah, Klamath County.
Yeah, former, did I say Jackson?
No,
I
meant Josephine.
Oh, Joseph. No, definitely Klamath County. And boy, I hope he gets in there, but at the same point, you have one Republican in a sea of Democratic U.S. House folks here in the state of Oregon. It's just like, okay, guys, is this the fight you want to take right now? I don't know. But I would even say that to Dennis. Dennis, I love what Dennis is all about, and I'm hoping that he runs again for office. But sometimes I think we're pretty bad at picking our battles.
Mm.
Well, this being sort of different than everybody else reminds me of the hopes for Colleen Roberts getting elected as a county commissioner in Jackson County. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Yeah, please continue.
All the things that she said leading up to her election, when she was on your show, I think most of us had a pretty good idea of who Colleen was and what we could expect. And she was fairly tight with Sandy Casanelli. They found they had a lot of things in common, so a lot of people figured, in fact, she agreed that when she first got in, that she'll never physically be one of the old boys, and the way they were treating her in the meetings, I mean, we saw the meetings. I mean, Danny Jordan was all over her. He's the county administrator. So we figured things would be a little tough for her at the beginning. It was, I mean, Sandy's second day in office. The sheriff came in and said, let's take 4 years of funding and funnel it into 3. Yes, we'll fall off the financial cliff. Yeah, when is that happening? Earlier, but that'll make better, et cetera, et cetera. So it was her second day. So when we talked with Colleen, I was saying, okay, now here's the fire. Come on, Colleen, tell us about what's happening.
Has she talked with you about it yet?
She did.
Oh, she did?
Yep, there's
What'd
nothing happening. There's nothing happening.
Okay. Well, at the moment.
Everything is awesome.
I honestly think, though, that you get dwarfed by the position once, and I don't know if this is the case with Colleen, because I haven't spoken with her really since she ended up getting sworn in a little earlier last month. And there are so many intertwining webs of interference getting in the way of anything anybody of a constitutional bent wants to go with, that I think you're almost overwhelmed at first trying to think, okay, here it is, I'm in here, I know that I ran with a certain platform, and that's why I was half joking where, well, you got to send everybody to the Association of Oregon Counties so you get absorbed by the Borg. So that you learn, little boys and girls, how the real world works. And, it's kind of like, even going back to that situation where, Kurt Chancellor, as an example. Kurt Chancellor says, hey, listen, the Oregon Constitution says very clearly that you have the right to a jury trial, period. And yet, you try to get anybody in any of the court system or the power structure to really agree with that, it's crickets. And so this is where I think a lot of our frustration comes from, and a lot of cynicism is bred towards it, because you see there is just such a monolith of entrenched power rather than law in Constitution. Yeah. And so I think this is where a lot of the libertarians and conservatives are asking themselves, what do we do to take this on?
I agree. We have part of my frustration is the idea that here we are, the whole of Southern Oregon has this problem where the federal government has a boot on our neck, and what are you going to do about that?
And you're hoping to get a grant from that federal government boot on your neck in order to fund Head Start or to fund this program or that program. How badly are you going to rock the boat?
Yeah, and my thing is, I mean, personally, I don't think that you ever fully free yourself from that whole thing until you say, no more welfare for me. What I want is for you to just go away and let me handle things from here on out. But what I was saying was, there seems to be a prescribed procedure by which you remove the boot, and the problem is we're not making any progress on that, and so I would like to see some rabble-rousers come in and invent their own procedure for doing it, because it's not working out so well so far. Now there's guys like Ken Ivory and a few others that have their own little suggestions or ways of doing it, or say Mark Levin, who's talking about a constitutional state convention.
Yeah, that's a fraud, though. Levin's a fraud when it comes to that, in my opinion.
So, but I mean, this is where I get frustrated. Is everybody's got an idea? When are we going to do something?
Well, I think that people are going to do something when the EBTs and the checks are no longer good. I'm dead serious about this. Yeah. And it's not that I think that is the correct answer or where I would like people to think, but most people, the Super Bowl's on, the Social Security checks are still coming in, and the EBT cards are still working. Oregon Trail has not been rejected. People have bought into socialism. Yeah. We've all been bought off into socialism, and if we can get somebody else to pay for our stuff, liberty is not all that important, but making sure that the Section 8 housing and the EBT, the corporate welfare for the cronies and such, as long as that's going, I don't think a whole lot changes. Yeah. But of course, I'm not one of these people that is going out there and saying, "Oh, buy gold because it's going to go to $10,000 when they destroy the dollar in 2015."
Right.
Listen, the system can stay crazy for a lot longer than people can stay solvent, waiting
So
for
it
it to go crazy. But really, their way of life has to vanish, or they have to really see it disappearing, I think, before people get off their behinds. And frankly, it's going to probably come from the younger generation. If you're 60, 70 years old and you're retired and you're dependent on PERS and such, you're going to rock that boat? I doubt it.
Yeah. And you know what? There is a lot of liberty-minded young people now. It's basically an up-and-coming movement, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. And those kind of movements will tend to come from the young. And I think it behooves us to find them and encourage them and try to tell them, don't go into college debt. No, don't hook yourself into the Borg.
Yes.
I think of my own daughter as an example. Oh, you got another college loan. No, don't do that.
Well, you know what? Thankfully, my son, he saw a bunch of his friends getting into debt, and his current roommate, he has a few roommates, and two of them are each over $100,000 in debt, and they're working as servers in a restaurant.
Boy, that's an eye-opener, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's this student loan debt is one of the biggest scams going right now. Tuition is just insane.
That's, as President Obama would say, that's a teachable moment.
Yeah, it is a teachable moment, no question.
Yeah.
How do you reach out to that younger audience, Bill? I mean, they're not well known for listening to conservative talk radio. How do you let them know what's happening so that they can be informed people that are helping change the system?
Boy, that's a great question. And when you figure that out, would you get back to me? Because I'll give you my experience that I didn't really start paying attention to the issues. Let's say, in my past career, I was mostly a rock and roll DJ at KPLZ in Seattle and did some work at KBOI and KZZE here locally as a morning show and rock and roll DJ. I don't think I really started paying attention, and I know you're going to laugh. It was when I first paid my property tax bill. Yeah. When I paid my first property tax bill, and I'm looking at this going, what? Yes. Well, what is this all about? And then it got me thinking, and then I started looking, and then I started reading. And unfortunately, the passion may come with a 25 or 30-year-old, but given the fact that we are delaying adulthood in our culture, in which we're talking about, oh, my kid, she's only 28, she shouldn't be able to depend on herself at this point. So I don't have an answer for that right now. In fact, you're giving me more things to think about than actual answers.
I have a question about being a talk show host. Now, when you book a guest on your program, and let's say you're sitting there, at 6:25, and at 6:35 you're supposed to have Dale Matthews on, but
don't use me as the example.
But Dale blows you off.
Oh, no!
And then you see Dale on the street, and Dale acts like nothing's ever happened, and and doesn't even look at you or give you the time of the day. Do you ever have that situation with guests, and what do you do?
Have I ever just met them on the street and then they don't recognize? Well, no, I've not had that happen, Mike.
Well, I'm not saying not recognize you. I'm saying purposefully avoid contact with you.
Oh, no, I've not had that. Frankly, I'm just antisocial. I don't like people, so I don't have that opportunity to go out and about and run into people.
Okay, but certainly you've had some guests blow you off at some point, and what happens when they call you later and try to get on your show again?
Oh, okay. Well, that does happen from time to time. Well, I'm human. There are times that I forget that people can sometimes forget. Generally speaking, though, that's why I'm not a big fan of guests calling me. I know a lot of folks will always say, well, I'll give you, what number should I call in on? Nah.
Yeah.
I try to stay away from that. Hey, give me your phone number, and if you're not willing to give me your phone number, unless you're some big fish someplace, chances are I really do prefer calling the guest. And rarely do I get blown off for that reason, unless it just goes to message. That's all.
So we're talking to a local area politician, and was asked, well, you're going to supply me with a list of questions ahead of time, right?
I don't even have a list of questions when people come on my show. I might have a few notes about what's going on, but I think the main thing is to listen to your guests and then key off on where they're going. Right. It's amazing how people love to talk about themselves.
Well, you know what? You've got one of the best news guys, Mike Kincaid. I really loved working with him at TRN. I was Savage's call screener.
Poor guy.
Oh, yeah. Let me tell you what.
I love Michael Savage, but I know he chews up screeners and producers and just spits them out.
Yeah.
Maybe not quite to the same extent as today, but still.
No question about it. It was a mill for sure. But Mike Kincaid, one of the funniest stories about him, and it was one of those things that just kind of sticks in your mind. It wasn't even a big event or anything, but Savage wanted him to read this statement that had been put out by the current president of Iran, whose name I can't even remember right now. It wasn't that long ago. We're talking.
It wasn't Ahmadinejad, was it?
Yeah, it was.
Okay.
And so Mike gets in a booth and reads this thing with this accent, and then I'm supposed to cut it up for sound bites,
No.
And, oh my! It was so funny. And
was it like everything this side of?
It kind of was. And he was reading along in this statement, which was what the guy had actually said, and then throws in a go figure. And I was laying on the floor in a puddle, and everybody in the whole audio room's looking at me like, who is this guy? What's going on? But that's one of the things that sticks in my mind about Mike Kincaid. He's a great guy, and he has one of the best radio voices ever.
When I grow up, I want to sound like Mike Kincaid. Unfortunately, I don't know if I'm ever going to grow up. I think probably my favorite interview, when I have a memory like that, you're thinking of Savage. And sometimes I get surprised at how some people are behind the scenes. Now, I'll take Ann Coulter. Have you ever talked with Ann Coulter?
No.
All right. Ann Coulter is an interesting woman. She's a great writer, in my view, good thinker. I don't always agree with where she's going off on something, but you see the way she comes off on television, and we're talking about Pitbull. She's going to chew you up and spit you out, right? And so when she's getting ready to come on the show, I don't really care. I mean, I'm glad she's coming, but I'm not one of these people. I realize that they put their leather underwear on one leg at a time, just like I do. And so, but still, I'll always remember that Ann and I were talking. I think we had about a half-hour interview, and usually you talk to people like that because they have a book out and they're hoping to sell a few, and they'll talk with you. And I'm sure the Breed's with her, and she says, well, is that okay? I just want to make sure that we're really doing the right thing for you. And, it was really nice talking to you. I'm thinking, who is this woman?
Yeah,
who is this person?
Yeah.
And it's really interesting. You realize how a lot of the thinkers or performers, they're almost putting on armor as they get ready to go out and do battle in the marketplace of ideas, so to speak.
Right. I was treated that way by Peggy Noonan. I was just barely out of my teens. I'm in Washington, D.C., and she, if people don't know, she's the one that wrote all of Ronald Reagan's most famous phrases.
I had a thing for Peggy Noonan, by the way.
Yeah,
you do, huh?
I did, at the time.
That's Peggy Noonan. And so I'm talking with her, and I swear it was just like talking with Ronald Reagan. I mean, all these Reaganisms just naturally coming out of her mouth.
Wow.
And it's a relatively attractive looking woman that's saying these things. And it was, and that's when I realized all things pluses and minuses about St. Ronald Reagan. He was very good at reading a script, and she was the writer.
Doesn't that make you wonder then, what did Ronald Reagan really think?
Yes, it really makes me wonder. And here's my assumption.
Yeah, what was the real Ronald Reagan?
Right.
Who was the real George Bush? Who's writing the script for Barack Obama? There's one there.
Yeah.
I think what it's about is that people would come up with their best ideas. They'd write the scripts for him. He has a certain rock solid idea of what he wants. And then every once in a while you see glimmers of him. When he was the governor of California, I got a chance to meet him and talk with him for 10 minutes, just the two of us. And he was saying things like, well, if those students keep protesting, why, we'll just shoot them all. And I'm looking at him like, is this guy joking? I don't think he was.
Well, of course, this
Oh,
was the
come
same
on.
guy that talked about that did the mic check, and by the way, the bombing will commence in.
You're right. Yeah, 5 minutes.
Could-
Yeah.
You know, just kind of that's the way Ronnie was, I guess.
But you know what? It's interesting that really kind of helped out his foreign policy as
Oh, yes.
implementing it at that time. No, it really.
Oh yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, I mean, it was one of those things. He kept the Russians on their heels all the time.
Can you imagine you're in the Kremlin and you hear the president saying, "I've just outlawed Russia and the bombing will commence"?
I'm
5 minutes?
absolutely sure that some of the State Department people, when they went over there, they said to the Russian leader or anyone else, listen, this guy is crazy, and so you better be careful. We never know what he's going to do.
And so he ended up getting accomplished what he wanted to get accomplished.
Exactly. What a brilliant strategy. But there's a wonderful Saturday Night Live skit where he's where the press is there and he's like, well, I just don't quite know. And then they leave and then he's like, all right, here, fire.
Yeah. I remember that one. That was you know, where the whole dumb thing is an act. You know.
Right.
Mhm.
Right.
Well, I never thought that he was a dumb man at all. In fact, there was a lot that I, admired about the gentleman. But like you said, when you see and you hear so much of that, well, maybe the point being is that he hired Peggy Noonan because Peggy Noonan's point of view and her issues and the way she would turn a phrase blended quite nicely with his natural style. I think maybe that's what we're talking about.
Okay.
Of course.
Right.
Of course. And I mean, this is exactly why Valerie Jarrett is probably the vetter of anything that leaves Obama's mouth.
Mm-hmm. Yep, there's the puppet master. Where do we go for
Bill,
this one? Well, okay, go ahead, please.
Bill, last question, if you will.
All right, yeah,
So-
because I have to get my beauty sleep.
Of course. Okay. So
Have you looked at my face?
That cannot be true.
My face, it needs it. It needs the sleep. I'm on the toddler schedule.
I heard you talking about the makeup this morning, and I want to call you and get some makeup tips later after we're not on the air anymore.
Now, that's absolutely true, though. There was that survey. They survey 18 to 21-year-old women, and then they come out saying, oh, they found out that makeup doesn't do all that much. Yeah, okay. Do it to a bunch of 50, 60-year-olds or so, and then tell us how it works out for you. But anyway, I digress.
Yeah, 18-year-olds with makeup. Okay.
Sure.
Who do you think in local politics, if there is anybody, who do you think is doing the job right and we should all look toward for enlightened leadership? Is there anybody?
I cannot. We have a lot of new people in office at this point. Ask me in about 6 months. Would that be okay? I think it's a little too soon to tell. Even at the state level, a lot of our Republican friends, as an example, are in the minority. They're leading in the minority. There's not a lot that they can do in particular. Give me a few months to observe more. I can't say that there's anybody who is out there in the system right now that are going, yeah, baby, I want to clone them.
Yeah.
All right? Not quite yet. That's not saying that there aren't good people. Please understand. It's just going to take a little more observation and compare what is actually done with what was promised. Fair enough?